This is a fire pit, just a black hole with a ring of rocks around it. But it's also the inspiration for my next project, and that's to write a song. Now, most of us probably don't think of songwriting as a DIY project, something we can do ourselves. Maybe we think that the only people who can really write a song are the creative geniuses who work out of places like Nashville, Los Angeles, or New York. But if you want to learn how to write a song, you can, the same way you can learn how to build a studio. You can write a song for your friends, your children, your partner, your lover, your church, or your band. A song you wrote yourself can touch the hearts of people you care about and help you express what you feel. To get started, you don't need a recording studio with a lot of fancy equipment. Just an instrument, some paper, and a pencil or pen. You'll need the patience to feel your way into the song, and you'll need some genuine curiosity about where the song might lead you and what you might learn about yourself. And you'll need to be focused on some kind of emotion. The emotion may be vague and unclear at first, but that's part of the songwriting, learning what the shape of the emotion might be, then finding that shape in the music and words. And you can't really plan every detail in advance any more than you can plan where each rock will go when you're building a wall. You have to trust your intuition. You have to play it by ear. Welcome to my channel and the first episode in this new series about how to write a song. Now that I've finished building this studio up on the hill behind our house, people have been asking me what I'm going to build next. And the answer is nothing that involves heavy lifting, at least not for a while. But I do have another do-it-yourself project in mind. What gave me the idea for it was I was building a fire pit up on the hill behind the studio. And I remembered when I was writing songs back in school, I would try out new material at a campfire in the campground in the park where I worked. I'd go out there on the weekend nights and play my new songs, see how it went. It was a good place to try out new material. People would circle up around the fire. There were strangers. They didn't know me. I didn't know them. But they would pay attention, and I could tell what worked and what didn't work in those songs. I'd like to do some songwriting again. And I thought, why not treat it like this studio project? It's a kind of construction project to write a song. And walk us through it step by step, starting from the very beginning. Now, I am certainly not the final authority on how to write a song. There are many people with more credentials than I have. But I do know a little bit about writing songs that please me. So maybe if you're interested in writing songs, you could get some ideas for how to write songs that please you. I hope so, and I hope you'll stay with me as we work on this project together. The song I want to write now began with a simple idea, just a phrase that popped into my head while I gathered up rocks to build my fire pit. And it came with a musical line. Come on down to the fire pit. That's all I had for a while. Who would be coming? A person or a group? I didn't know. The phrase played in a loop for an hour or so while I fit the stones together, and it kept demanding my attention. It was trying to be a song. That's when I decided to record what came next. So I set up a tripod in my little studio, grabbed a guitar, slouched back on the futon, and began to noodle. Sometimes noodling comes first. In this case, the idea came first. You'll notice my terrible posture. When I'm writing a song, I'm not performing or working on guitar technique. My goal is total relaxation. I want to strip all the effort away and just open my mind. It helps to isolate myself, and the little studio is peaceful with a view of the woods. To get started, I tried to get a handle on the scrap of tune I had heard while I was building my fire pit. At first, it was vague and in flux, so I fumbled around for some chords that would work. While I was sorting the chords out, a second line popped into mind along with some lyrics. Tonight when you get home. I liked that. The message became personal that way. The you would be a lover or a spouse, and that seemed right to me because it can be romantic to sit by a fire. So these were the chords I had so far: C, G, A minor, C, F, G, C. If you're familiar with the Nashville code, the numbers would help you transpose it in a different key. In the key of G, G is the one chord, and if you follow the standard sequence of notes, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, D is the fifth note and therefore the 5 chord. It's as simple as that. At this point, I realized that the chord changes were coming fast, 2 chords per measure. This wasn't going to be a bluegrass song or a typical country song. It had some Irish in it. I'm going to speed things up a bit while I noodle, so this will sound crazy for a while, like a bunch of chipmunks, but I think you can hear me trying different chords to find a pattern I like. In a lot of songs, the second line starts out like the first, but ends by going to the 2 chord, in this case D7, then the 5 chord G. That pattern leaves us hanging, in need of resolution, because it doesn't return to the root chord C. And that seemed to fit in this tune. By that logic, the chords for the second line would be C, G, A minor, C, D7, then G. But when I played them that way, it was boring. So I spent a long time trying various alterations. Finally, by intuition or maybe just by accident, I stayed on the A minor for a full measure instead of bouncing back to C, and that broke the sing-song pattern and gave the line some character that felt more original. When I think I'm onto something, I get a piece of paper. In a lot of folk songs, Irish or otherwise, the third line has the same melodic structure as the first line. So that's what I tried. I don't want to repeat that. It's boring. So I used another bar of A minor to break the pattern. There was something about having that minor chord that gave the tune some energy, holding back and then releasing the bouncy major chords. Stay on the A minor. It's best to set up a pattern that the listener can grasp, something familiar, and then break the familiarity with something different, something unexpected, and then resolve back to the pattern, because that's satisfying. It's sort of the way we experience the world. We go along in our habits and then experience something new, and then that helps us grow, and then we go back to our habits, and that's comforting. So I think if you set up that kind of strategy for writing a song, you play on our instincts. As I start to develop an idea of what the structure is going to be, the chord progression and the melody, I run it through over and over again to make sure it works, to make sure it coheres. And I have to keep testing it to make sure it sounds right to me, to make sure that there's not a better way to phrase things. It's a trial and error process. It's experimental, and that's the fun part, I think. Now I needed a fourth line that resolved to the root chord C, and that one came easy. The pattern I'd set up in the first 3 lines implied a resolution. This time, the extra couple of beats within the 5 chord the G, gave the melody time to step down the scale to the home bass, the root chord C. So here's the chord progression I scrawled on my sheet of paper. Of course, this crude chord chart doesn't capture the notes or the timing. So I went home later to my office, used a software called Guitar Pro to start laying it out in a chart. Not absolutely necessary for my own personal songwriting purposes, but in case it's a song that I wanted to play with a band, it'd be helpful to have it charted, and it's also a good way to sort of think of the song from a different direction. See if there's anything that I notice when I put it on the page that doesn't work. So I'm not real fast at composing music this way. I think it was worth doing. And then when I had the part that I had composed so far charted out, you can play it. You can use the software to play a MIDI, an artificial piano version or keyboard version of it, so that you can hear the basic melody roughly. And here's what that sounds like. So I still needed some time for the melody and the chords to kind of gel and feel natural to me. So a day or two later, I took Felix up the hill with me and we sat by the fire pit, and I did some more noodling on the guitar, playing with the melody and the chords, trying to hear how the vocals would fit. I was sniffing around at the melody the way Felix was sniffing around at the fire pit. I started thinking about what kind of song this was. Clearly, it's an upbeat, kind of optimistic sounding song. It's not heavy and serious like some of my songs are. It's not going to be about loss or heartbreak. It's the kind of song that wants to be optimistic and positive, but probably needs some kind of problem underneath to keep it from being shallow. So I'll have to think about that as I start to work on the lyrics. At this stage, all I had was a verse or a chorus or maybe both. I didn't know. And if I did use the same progression for the verse and the chorus, the song would need a bridge to break the pattern and create some tension. But I'd gone far enough with the melody at this stage. I didn't want to get too far ahead of the lyrics. I like to go back and forth between the lyrics and the melody, making sure they grow up together. So I'll stop this episode here. Next time we'll come back to the studio and try to find some words. So I hope you'll come back for the next episode and help me struggle through the problem of how to write lyrics for this song. Meanwhile, please subscribe, like, share, comment, and if you have any disagreements or advice for me about how to write a song, don't hesitate. Put them in the comments. And I'll see you next time. Thanks for joining me.